Excuse me. November 2nd, Don in London. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour, or both in my case. My substance of addiction, alcohol, so I'm an alcoholic in recovery, and my behaviour around people, places and things could equally be addictive. Trying to be with the right people, in the right places, doing the right things, having the right things, and also wanting the right things. A good consumer, and earning enough to make life quite comfortable all those years of drinking, until I realised the more I was doing in work, because work was another addiction, it was more of the same stuff. Different company, different people, same old stuff. And I worked myself into the ground, because that's what addicted people do. We work ourselves to a point of exhaustion and then wonder why we have a burnout and probably an anxiety state followed by a nervous breakdown. And I didn't expect those things to happen to me, because I was doing all right on the surface, superficially and without too much depth. It sort of looked all right on the outside, but inside I felt awful, partly because I was depressed and partly because I hadn't found out how to be me. So just one day at a time I learn a little bit more about who I am, what I am, and what it's like to be sober just one day at a time. And it all seems to work pretty well, as long as I don't take a drink and I don't become obsessive around people, places and things. So it's never about being with the right people in the right place doing the right things. It's about finding happiness and then doing whatever seems appropriate. Quite a big change for me. So drinking career, very, very long, 35 years or more, proper drinking. But I did take the first drink very young, very, very young indeed. And I noticed it made me feel happier, detached, in a more malleable way of looking at the world, no more fear, or so it seemed, and that set a pattern. It fixed my feelings, the alcohol did. They either were suppressed or I felt happy, and I could push away the fear which seemed to bother me constantly. And on it went, from there on in, a constant dealing with life by fixing my feelings so I didn't have to feel the horrible ones or the ones that other people might find ugly, and just be a happy-go-lucky person. But these days I have every feeling under the sun inside me, and that's okay. So I'm feeling okay this morning and in touch with reality as best I can. Now, how have I been able to do that? Well, I had a moment of clarity towards the end of my drinking time. Everything had gone. I couldn't associate with family because they felt appalled by the way I'd turned out in terms of what I looked like, and physically I was on my way out. So they were appalled at my condition, and I was sitting on a park bench in isolation thinking to myself, well, I've tried everything, but I'm still not able to stop drinking. And I'd had more than one moment of clarity where I asked for help, had been dried out, and the professional people who got me dry, just dry of the alcohol, but pretty much a dry drunk, that is, every feeling not working, every outlook not quite understanding or having clarity about it being real life again, and a desire to fix the emptiness inside. And those experts said, why not go to AA, the Fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous? And in my very first attempts I did go at least once a day. But when I was doing that, I was also in a rehab which wasn't really conducive to learning how to be in fellowship. It was more about breaking people down to their constituent fearful parts and then trying to build them up again, or hoping that AA would build up what they took away in rehab. Because rehab for me was not a safe place, but fellowship is a safe place. So it was a contradiction. on the one hand it was supposed to be safe, and on the other hand it wasn't. So my recovery was slowed down by my inability to cope with rehab. So what did I do? I found myself in a place of absolute rage, anger and resentment of being treated poorly by those in control of my destiny within the rehab. And I don't know that they really cared that much what they did with people, or the impact they had. But it had a bad impact on me, and it had a bad impact on many people, and it caused people to go out and drink again. Or rather, the circumstances did, the way we turned out at the end of our time in rehab. So I served my sentence, if you like, in the rehab. Towards the end they said, we think you ought to stay another 6 months, and there was no funding for it as far as I knew. But then it turned out that a deal had been done, and I would be there for another 6 months. And 6 months of the horror of that place, and no respite from it, except to go to meetings of AA. It was an imbalance, and it was impeding my progress. So what happened? Went out and drank again, didn't I? Why? Because I was absolutely at my wit's end. So I was madder than I'd ever been, or more insane than I'd ever been before. But on that park bench, followed by a consultation with a proper psychiatrist who could make an assessment, which took 2 or 3 hours, he said, well, we need to get you a roof over your head so you can get back to AA, that place which may help you keep sober. So we made an agreement, a roof over my head, and go to AA. He kept his part of the bargain, and with the help of local authorities I was able to find sanctuary to rest my head somewhere without rain. But a lot of mice and other people using around me, that's not their fault, that's just the way of the world. And to go to fellowship, the fellowship of AA, as many times a day as I felt it necessary to stop me from going in a pub, a bar, a place where I could get drink and then get back to where I was before. So the good news is I recognised that the fellowship of AA was a safe place to try and unravel the horror of my life and how it had turned out. And I had the help and support of professional people who put me in a place of as much safety as they could afford at the time, and then see what could happen next. So the good news is, from there on in, I was able to concentrate on how to be sober, how to make the best of fellowship, how to make the best of being a human being again, and get to a place where I could cope with reality and know how I was feeling about it. So the fellowship of AA is a big part of my story, and remains so, because I still go to meetings, I still listen to other people and what's going on for them, and I also share what's going on for me too. And part of this process I was asked to do these videos, which are about recovery and the 12-step program of AA. 12 steps, or life principles, so I have freedom of choice today to be myself, freedom of choice to understand how I feel and what I may do. And it's all based on real life, being real about life, my feelings, my outlook, my thinking, and what is possible and what is not possible. So I share here about AA, the daily reflections for today, and something of the steps and how they impact on me. And having come into November, the step is sort through prayer and meditation, read it out properly. Sort through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So there's that word God, and in my life sometimes I've been an atheist, sometimes I've been an agnostic, and sometimes I've been a believer, depending on what I thought God might be in my life and as I understood Him. So the good news in fellowship is you work out what your higher power is for yourself. So if you're an atheist, it could be your good conscience and a connection to what's going on around you and listening to the wisdom of what's coming in, rather than the old attitudes and behaviour which got us drinking. So you don't have to know what your higher power is, other than conscience tells me, and my higher power tells me, in no uncertain terms. If I ask, what's the difference if I drank today or didn't drink today? The answer is, if I drank today, back to the old behaviour, and I wouldn't be able to stop it, because that's the nature of addiction. But the new behaviour is, let the world in, look for the truth of life today, not my opinion about it or my belief about it. Look for the truth, learn how to love and be loved back, and useful. Simple as that. And my higher power is truth, love and wisdom. Wisdom of the universe coming through people, usually. Or a blinding flash sometimes of, I realise now what I might do. So it's not about me and my way, it's about me being realistic about what can be done in real life choices, and the freedom to make them without having to fix my feelings as a consequence. So I'm very lucky, because most people don't know how to get sober, won't do much about it, because drink has become the best friend, because it fixes everything, or a drug fixes everything, or some sort of behaviour fixes the feelings in that moment. And getting out of that self-harming, because that's what it becomes, is very, very difficult. So most often people don't get well from the addiction, and only a few do, and that's because it's so difficult. It's not that people have no willpower, it's because they're still relying on willpower, which isn't working anymore. You know, that's the nature of it. Addiction is doing the same thing over and over again, trying to fix whatever it is, and it won't work anymore, and that's insane. So the illness is not able to stop. Whatever we do on our own, stand up on your own 2 feet, put on a brave face, and inside you're probably still falling apart. And the more I used to say, when asked, how are you today? I'd say, I'm okay. But I wasn't. And I didn't realise where I was headed. Into addiction, and then not able to stop doing the harmful things. So the Fellowship of AA provided me with an opportunity to find out how to be sober, not to be cured of alcoholism or addiction or self-harm, but to learn how to deal with life on a daily basis, so I don't self-harm and don't go backwards into addiction. There is no way back to safe fixing, because that's what it is. So what is AA? I share about it from the AA preamble, which is important to me because it makes sure you understand if you're a newcomer or a person considering whether you're an addict or not, no matter what the substance or behaviour. You understand that nobody's going to impose anything on you in fellowship recovery, and if they do, because they're misguided or misjudging it, you can tell them to bugger off. So here is the AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. And believe you me, if it's your first meeting or first few meetings of AA, and all these people are talking about the truth of what they're doing and what's going on, from being just newly sober or returning from a relapse, or 35 to 50 years sober, it's all happening to people that day. And it's quite frightening to hear the truth of what people say, and it can be very off-putting to a new person and fearful, because are they going to ask me to do the same? And the answer is no. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, and nothing else. You're not obliged to do anything. You can just come along and listen, have a cup of tea if you can hold it, eat a biscuit if you can crunch on it, and just listen. So there are no rules, laws or regulations. There's only one requirement, a desire to stop drinking. And you can only get the desire to stop drinking sometimes by coming to a few meetings and seeing what it is like to try and get sober. And it can be quite infectious in terms of enthusiasm for the idea, but then it's the reality of day by day dealing with sober, and it's painful. So we don't need rules, laws and regulations to make it more difficult. We need a person to develop a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. So we're not beholden to anyone else. We don't take donations and we don't rely on outside sources. But we do put some money in if we have it. But if we don't have it, don't worry. It's not an imposition. If you have a bit of money to spare to pay for to help pay across the group, this is to help make a contribution to tea, coffee, biscuits, literature and some admin costs. That's the prudent reserve we look for. So don't stop coming because you haven't got any money. If I'd done that, I'd have never got to AA. I had no money for quite a long time. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. But everybody in the fellowship has loads of affiliations to causes, sects, religion, politics, medical professions, financial professions, people who sweep the street. That's one job I got fired from, sweeping the street. I neglected to tell them I had a broken leg, but you know, we do try to earn money where we can. And I was a bit optimistic that they would let me do that. It was night shift, I didn't think they'd noticed in the dark. Anyway, they did, sat me on the spot. First night. So we're full of it. Opinions, beliefs and all the rest of it, and you'll hear everything. But the point is, the fellowship itself is there for sobriety. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So although you may hear everybody else's life in great detail, their experience, strength and hope of living sober, which can be quite difficult. After all, life is difficult, and if we accept it's difficult, then we don't have to worry about it being difficult. But that's just the way it is. So we share the truth of who we are, but you take from that the similarities and not the differences, because we're all different. We are all on a unique journey of life. Our path, where we are in life, is our own. But we all live in the same moment today. So fellowship is good for a day. But what we do develop is wisdom over the time. How to be sober, what our triggers are for anger and resentment, which are very difficult to cope with, because often we haven't, or we haven't done it in an appropriate way. We have either pushed our feelings away or absolutely engaged in extreme feelings, so the rest of the world is frightened of us. So we might be a people pleaser or a controller and manipulator, all sorts of things. But we learn how to find balance in the end. And it's not an overnight thing. So we might say overnight, yes, good idea to stop drinking. Live through the awfulness of withdrawal from whatever substance or behaviour, stop doing it, and then try to do something differently, new behaviour. And it's not easy. So that's why the fellowship is there. Like-minded people on their own personal journey, developing freedom to choose next actions today. So that's what it's about, and I emphasise there are no rules, laws, regulations to govern your behaviour. It's what you choose to do, and all you need is a desire to stop, whatever it is, the substance, the behaviour, self-harm. So to back it up, we have things like daily reflections, this book. Yes. 1 page a day, covering the 12 steps and 12 traditions through the months. So 12 months, 12 steps, 12 months, 12 traditions. So the daily readings, if you like, reflect often the step of the month. So this month is about prayer and meditation, seeking better conscious contact with reality, the truth of now, how to love people, be loved back, and receive the wisdom from other people, rather than always relying on our own idea of how it should be. Because really there are no should-bes. Life is the way it is, and we have freedom to choose around it, and also sort out what happened in the past. So prayer and meditation for the agnostic and atheist may seem like a bit of a hard stretch, if you like, or a hard ask. But ask anybody who has thought about it. What is meditation? What is prayer? It's asking for clarity, or seeking clarity around a situation that we may face, or simply looking at the big picture, seeing how we fit in, seeing how reality is working for us, or how are we working with reality. It's how we understand life today. So prayer and meditation is not a bad thing to do, no matter what your background may be, and developing an understanding that the world is not against us, but if we ask for help. And I said it in a meeting last night, when we say, "Oh my God, I don't believe this," out loud, and people hear it, they will look at us and then ask us, "What don't you believe?" And if you say it in a meeting, "I can't believe just how bad and awful my life is right now," people are listening, and if they have something to add or suggest, they will. If you say, "Oh my God, it's wonderful and nothing's going wrong," you're not likely to get many takers. They'll just say, "Good for you." Or they may be quite resentful and say, "Good for you. It's all right for you, isn't it?" Or they may ask you, "How come it's good for you?" Because it's okay to find out. Why did a person feel good today? So we need the good news as well as the middle news and the bad news and the extreme news, and also the news that people die when they go out and relapse, or life doesn't get better and they come back and have another go at being sober. But each time we go back out and try it again, and then try and get back, it seems a little bit more difficult. So the sooner we learn how to stop hurting ourselves, the better. So, daily reflections for today, based loosely around prayer meditation. Keeping optimism afloat. The other steps can keep most of us sober and somehow functioning, but step 11 can keep us growing, and that comes from The Language of the Heart, which was written by Bill Wilson, based on experience and evidence from other sources. A sober alcoholic finds it much easier to be optimistic about life. Optimism is the natural result of me finding out how to gradually be able to make the best rather than the worst of each situation. In other words, how do I make the best of this real life situation today? As my physical sobriety continues, I come out of the fog, which is what I did, but my fog was around for a long time. I'm not exaggerating, I'm just saying it took me a while to get there. Gain a clearer perspective, and I'm able to better determine what courses of action to take. And part of my fog was trying to believe in another person's God, or understanding of God, not realizing when it says God of our understanding, it's the God of your personal understanding which is going to work for you. Your higher power, your good conscience, or whatever it may be, as long as you're not the higher power, but merely a player in life. And I don't mean that as you know what I mean. Somebody who is just accepting that life is as it is today, and I've got some freedoms to make some decisions and choices. And normally it's better informed from external sources rather than the old thinking I had. As vital as physical sobriety is, I can achieve greater potential for myself by developing an ever-increasing willingness to avail myself of the guidance and direction of my higher power, or a higher power. My ability to do so comes from my learning and practicing the principles of the AA program. The melding of my physical and spiritual sobriety produces the substance of more positive life. Now, spiritual sobriety seems to be the ability to see and live reality as it is. Spiritual, in the moment of now, coping with real life as it is. So spiritual is a very practical outlook. It's living in the moment and being open to listen to what is possible and not possible, which is quite good really, because I always thought I had to be learning it and then doing it and producing it for other people rather than listening more to other people and what they wanted, although I did do that. But often I had a solution which was based on my life experience, which would just shortcut most things, and get an instant solution in business or work. I started work early, thank you for that, Dad. It wasn't his fault. It was not going to go there right now. But I did start working early, thinking and problem solving early, because life was extremely difficult, and these are parts of the reasons why. So my thoughts this morning, which come into it, prayer and meditation. When I go to a meeting like last night, I reflect on what everybody's saying, which is meditation. So a good hour's worth last night, listening to somebody who really understands what it's like to not feel life as it's happening and then wonder why it feels horrible later on. So my thoughts this morning: where did the fear start? No safe place, home felt uneasy and unpredictable. A wrench in my gut and an argument ensued. This was normally when my dad came home, worse for wear, from drinking. And don't forget, everybody was drinking, so he just joined in and then got caught in the same malady. Me hiding from the anger which came from the drink. For decades, unresolved feelings pushed away and far down inside. So fear. For decades, unresolved feelings of fear pushed down, and then topped off with anger and resentment. Faith, for me, faith listens today. Fear may rise up, but I am no longer crippled and hiding in the dark. So I can have my explosive moments, not because I'm allowed to, but because they happen. My feelings happen in the moment more often. So I don't have to go away and process them. But for a long period in my life, I wouldn't show my feelings to other people, even to those I dearly loved, the women in my life, particularly, because I didn't know how to express my true feelings. But I'd walk away thinking that wasn't right. Whatever went on just there, it wasn't right. And then push them down with a drink or two. So I was difficult to know, and it was also difficult for me to understand how to stop being superficial and indifferent to myself, and therefore superficial and indifferent to other people. Because deep down I loved them and cherished them, but I didn't know how to show it. Or what would happen if I did show it? You know, the greatest vulnerability is rejection, probably. So today, principles of truth, love and wisdom. The truth of now, how to love, be loved back, and then wisdom from everyone around me, all happening in the moment of now. Now this is the higher power working in reality. For me, learning truth, love and wisdom from others, a greater power than me. 7 billion people on the planet, all generating truth, love and wisdom, and we can access that from some people around us who we love and cherish and understand a little bit more, and they help us understand ourselves, our feelings in the moment of now, because after all, the whole fellowship program is about emotional and spiritual progress, developing the ability to live in the moment, have our feelings and express them, and cope with reality. Back in the day, events would happen. I would be uneasy and not sure. Always felt like my feelings were playing catch-up. I would walk away numb, and then feel extremes of emotion and drink to stop reality impinging on my world. From fear and fantasy to faith. From fear and fantasy, that's how it used to be, to faith in reality. You know, faith that live real life and real life will happen. Spiritual progress just for today, and my spiritual progress is knowing my feelings, what I'm about, what I'm doing in the moment of now, and making plans either for today or a future based on real steps forward. So I feel good about that. There's lots more from other years which I'll put on the blog. So AA, 12 steps, 12 traditions. 12 steps for me to be open, honest and willing to learn life, how to be myself in the moment of now and cope with it, and cope with everything that's going on around me by letting in the wisdom of the world, truth, love and wisdom, and the 12 traditions about unity, service and recovery, helping each other keep sober, one day at a time. So fellowship is what you see is what you get on a daily basis. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but always there's something to learn from it about how people are, how they feel, and how they're coping with their life and their reality. We all live in the same place. It's called today. And as I end these videos, the Serenity Prayer helps me accept some things. I accept I can change me and my behaviour with a little help from my friends and the rest of the world, but I can't change you and your behaviour with the help of my friends and the rest of the world. How you choose to live is your freedom. How I choose to live is my freedom. And sometimes we get on and rub along quite nicely together, which is great, and other times we will be at odds, because that's just the way it is. We all still have our outlook, our freedom of outlook, which makes life difficult. Mind you, locally, St. Paul's Cathedral and the church seem to have understood. They're not against poor people reacting badly to rich people living richly. So they've stopped trying to move people on from outside the cathedral. After 2 or 3 vicars committed vicaricide and resigned. That's a new word, vicaricide. I was going to use it in the meeting last night, but it was too serious to go there. But, they didn't actually resign from the church, they just resigned from their positions within St. Paul's, because the Corporation of London was imposing an outlook on the church which is not consistent with gospel and is not consistent with religious views held in that church. So it was a bit of a psychotic dilemma. It's called cognitive dissonance, where on the one hand it's supposed to be hunky-dory and people can come worship and have weddings and funerals, but on the other hand we've got a bunch of people outside who are getting in the way of our general day-to-day business of being religious or spiritual. Now, spiritual is coping with reality and saying, well, they can camp out as long as they like, it's not up to us to deal with it. And indeed, Jesus probably would be in the tents outside complaining about the rich folks having too much and the poor folks not having enough to get by. And don't forget, we have malnutrition in children in the UK because there is not enough money floating in the system to take children out of poverty in a highly developed Western civilized country. Or rather, the will to stop the poverty is not upon us. So we have to do the best we can with what is happening and be real about it, and be real about what we can do and can't do. So the Serenity Prayer does help me, can do, change me, my attitudes and behaviour, and give a bit more. Can't change you, your attitudes and behaviour, but you're probably giving as well. And then what is the wisdom around that? So the Serenity Prayer is as simple as this: to God or in good conscience, God or in good conscience, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference in the moment and just for today.